person. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's good to be back in Provo. I don't know how many people know this, but I lived here in 1989 in a little house right on Main Street. I was only here for about 6 months, and the Mormons just couldn't get me out of here fast enough. And I moved to Washington, D.C., and the rest is history. I know. That was culture shock. Why are we here today? All right, that's a pretty good answer. I'll take Ted Cruz. I'll take Mike Lee. The reason why I'm here today, some people will come and we have another candidate, Donald Trump, that is running as a personality. I am not here for a personality. You're not here for the personality. We are here for the Constitution of the United States of America. And it's high time that it's restored. There is a choice that America has to make, and we are at a fundamental crossroads now. And we know it. We know it with everything in us. And I am amazed at our country, both good and bad. I've been amazed at the strength of people. I've been amazed going across the country speaking for Ted Cruz and looking at people in the eye and seeing how engaged they are. I'm also amazed at how many people have lost their principles, to where some of our party principles are just to beat Hillary. Who can beat Hillary? How shallow have our principles become if that's what we stand for? We stand for so much more than that. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our principles are the right to free speech and a free press and free assembly, and to petition our government. Of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And that we have a right to be secure in our persons and our papers. It doesn't matter what the spy agency has built right down the road. We have a right to our privacy. That is a constitutional right. Those are just a few of our principles. Now, where did they come from and how did they get so lost? We have lost them because we have taken them for granted for far too long. And it's every generation that has to renew the covenant. We each have to do our part. Each generation has to renew it. They have to choose it for themselves. And too many of us don't take that choosing seriously. We have just said, I want to go do my thing. And we've worried about our rights. Instead of asking what our God-given responsibility is to those rights. Those rights came from God. He entrusted them to us. He entrusted those rights to us, each of us. I remember my best friend, he's the reason I'm a Mormon. That guy. Pat was just a living example through thick and thin for over a decade. And I watched him and I watched his family. I didn't want to be a Mormon. Jeez, who wants to sign up for that? Jeez, I don't have any fun. And at least we have chocolate. We got that done. But I I didn't want to be a Mormon, but I found it to be true. So Pat said to me at some point, he said to me, now, you find that true? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, now you're kind of trapped. Yep. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, now that you know it's true, you have a bigger responsibility. You're more in trouble than if you didn't know the truth. And I said, you should have told me that in the first place. I would have said, shut up, don't tell me, I don't want to know. But the same thing is true with our Constitution. The same thing is true about our rights, because they did not come from man, they came from God, and they were endowed to us. We are their protector. We are the sentinel on guard. And if we lose them in our generation, we will have to answer to the Almighty for it. I have spoken to Baptists, I have spoken to evangelicals, I have spoken to people of all different faiths, and I deliver the same exact message. The people of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, yes. Wake up! Now is your time! I said something earlier today. We flew in this morning and we're doing 3 rallies today, and then I'm flying out. I'm going to go see Brian Regan and have some laughs and then fly out. But I have a special message for the people of Utah. And a message that I haven't said to anybody else, because I'm not of their faith and I don't have any right to speak to them in these tones. But I believe the Book of Mormon. I believe it to be true. I believe every word of it. I'm a convert since 2000. So I come to it with a different perspective. Many people here came to it through your family. And many people take it for granted. But let me tell you this. It's either true or it's not. And that book spells out in great detail what things look like before the Lord comes back. And he gave us that book so we can protect freedom here. He also gave us that book so we would know what to do at the time. Now you either believe that or you don't. You either believe that to be true, it's not just a book. Then let the priesthood lead. Priesthood holders, stand up and take your staff. You are the guardian at the gate. I've read the prophets, the modern prophets. I've read a lot of Benson. Thank the Lord for sending President Benson. And everything he said is scriptural. Everything he said was true. Go back and read President Benson. And priesthood members, take your responsibility seriously, or as Pat told me, oh, you believe this now? Oh, you're in even more trouble if you don't do it. I won't say anything more that's controversial, and that, by the way, that message does not come with my endorsement of who you should back. That has nothing to do with who you should back. You bring that to the Lord. That's his decision with you and the priesthood. Now, let me tell you why I believe it's Ted Cruz. Let me tell you a story. George Washington was an amazing man. He is my favorite man. He is the indispensable man. And that means something. Up until 1920, we used to know who George Washington was, but the progressives erased him. And the reason why they erased him is because they knew if you knew who he was, you would try to emulate him. You would try to be more like him. And then the world would never go bad. So they erased him. He was the first one that the progressives took out. They did it for a reason, because he was a servant his entire life. He didn't want to, at 13 years old, he wanted to join the Royal Navy. Thank goodness he didn't. He would have been on the wrong side, but he wanted to join the Royal Navy. And his mother was very dramatic, and he brought his steamer trunk up onto the boat, and he set it there, and he was with all the other sailors, and he was standing there, and his mother was down at the gangplank. She's like, "Oh, George, no, please don't leave." And I could just see the other sailors like, "Whoa, dude, I can see why you want to go to the ocean." She made a scene. And he picked up his steamer trunk and he went back down the gangplank and set it next to her and he said, "Mother, if this is where you require me, this is where I shall remain." He served his mother. He didn't do what he wanted to do. When it came time for the revolution, he didn't want to be the general. He begged them, "Don't make me the general, I don't want to be the general." But he served his nation. When it came time for him to be the president, he begged. No. He wrote his farewell address after the first term. The first term was ending, and they came to him and said, "You gotta run again." He's like, "Oh, geez, please, for the love of Pete." But in 1787, something dramatic happened. The Articles of Confederation were starting to fall apart. And he was called into service again. And all he wanted to do his entire life was one thing: farm on Mount Vernon. And he had finally come home after the war. And he was farming and he was happy. He finally, at 55, was allowed to pursue his happiness. And a rider came on a horse in the middle of the night in the rain and got off his horse and pounded on the door of Mount Vernon. "General!" And he came down the stairs and he opened up the door. And the man said, "General, we need you in Philadelphia. The Articles of Confederation are falling apart. Congress is falling apart. Nobody will talk to each other. Nobody will stay in the same room. Ben Franklin and the others need you. You're the only man that can hold this country together. Everyone respects you. If you just come and stay there for the summer and sit there, we have a chance of survival. If you don't, we won't make it." And George Washington said, after a life of service, something that is so unusual for him. He looked the man in the eye on the porch and said, "Have I not yet done enough for my country?" And he slammed the door. In my mind's eye, I see George Washington walking back to the stairs and putting his hand on the banister and doing what I always do when I know the answer and the Lord is talking to me. You know that feeling. Yep. And I believe the Lord said to him, "No, General, your time isn't done. No, sir, you haven't served your country enough." Because I don't know if you know this, Thomas Jefferson didn't write those words. When in the course of human events, that all men are created equal, and among these rights, he was channeling me, the Almighty God. He didn't write it. You think you won the war, General? You think you won that? I won the war. You happen to be there. And General, it says in the Declaration of Independence, among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which means there are more to be enumerated, more that I'm going to send, more that I'm going to require you to protect. And with those rights, these rights are not about you. The responsibilities are about you. These rights are about further generations and my plans as the Almighty God, what I'm going to do. You know, Ben Franklin had the kite. He found some electricity. You know what we're going to do with that? I'm sending men that will electrify houses and lights and street lights. The miracle of electricity and the telephone and the television and the automobile. All will happen because men are free here. And someday, General, Americans, because of what you have to finish, will place their feet on the surface of the moon. So no, General, your job's not done. And that night, George Washington got onto his horse by himself and rode to Philadelphia. And he sat through that long summer for the Constitutional Convention. And he didn't say very much. And as usual, Congress was arguing. And at the end, there was one state that was a holdout. This one state said, I can't sell this to my people. I need some pork. I need some gifts for my people because they didn't even want this Constitution, and I can't get it done. And Ben Franklin, who was 88 and had to be carried on a chair with pillows by 4 men to the Constitutional Convention every day because he was in so much pain he was taking opium. And even in his opiated state, the cobblestones were too painful for him to walk on. At 88 years old, he heard that argument, and he was sitting in the back. And he said, gentlemen, we cannot do this thing without doing it right. We all know that we have seen not the finger, not the hand, but we have all seen the whole arm of God. We didn't write this. We are not going to soil it now with compromise and deal making. Let us do this one thing right. This one state would not give in. What a surprise, it was New York. And they argued until George Washington shifted in his seat. Just slight movement from him was enough to silence a room. And he stood, and the room fell as silent as this. And he said these words, quote, let us raise a standard to which the wise and the honest can repair. The event, it's in the hand of God. Those are the words that granted the world